Hi there, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand, and I wanted to show you how to make these two cute cards using the Celebrate Sunflower stamp set and dies. And this is what I call a twofer card because I cut the early espresso outline of the sunflower and I used some of the pieces to create the lion's face. So let's get started. In this set, as I mentioned, I'm using the Celebrate Sunflowers. I'm also using a stem from the Daisy Lane set. And on here for the You're My Person, I'm bringing that in from the Lovely You set, as well as the Lovely Labels Punch. So pick a punch to give the nice label there. The colors I'm using are the background for both cards. The base is Early Espresso, so I need to have a white inside piece. And for the lion, I've used a piece from a paper from the Flowers for Every Season set. And I've cut that down to size. And when you cut it down to size, I always cut the inside out. If you watch any of my other videos, you'll see that I do cut the center out of any of the layers because you're not going to see that center part, and I think it's kind of a waste of paper. So I've already cut, using the stitched rectangles dies, a piece out. This won't be used. I'll keep this aside for another project in the future. And the length of this was cut off the bottom of it. There's just a little bit left at the bottom. So when I cut that off, I always keep it in case I want to use it, and sometimes I'll just stick it on the inside bottom of the card. So that's what that little piece is. So that's the background. I could use either side. I don't know which side I'll use, but if you are using a die to cut it out, keep in mind, like with the stitched rectangles, the stitching shows better on that side than it does on this side. So if you are going to use something like that in the future, when you cut the center out, think about which side you're going to want the stitching to show. For this, we won't see the stitching because it's just going to be covered up with white card, so it doesn't matter. I could use that side if I choose. I'll decide when I get to that point. The other piece I need for here is already die cut. I used the large sunflower die from the sunflower die set. This cuts out the stamped image, but it also cuts out a blank. So I did that. This time around I did crushed curry. I believe this one here might have been the new cinnamon cider for that one. So that's for the background of the lion's face. And then for the other card, as I said, they both have the Early Espresso base and a white piece for the inside. I've changed it up a bit. I'm using, I think this is a retired pink color, and I can't think of the name. Berry Burst, I think. That one's Magenta Madness, but I was just using some of my retired stock. So basically a pink or whatever color you want. And then two strips. I've got a 1/2 inch strip. Again, it's leftover pieces from cutting my cardstock down, and a 3/4 inch strip to use in my pick-a-punch, and I'll show you some tips on that later. I've already cut the leaves. I've done 3 leaves, and I've already cut them using the sunflower die. So I've got 3 leaves already cut in Just Jade, and then I used one of these little kind of a leafy branch die from the same set just to do one so I can decorate the inside of the card. So that's already cut. And I've already embossed the background for this card. So that's embossed with the Brick and Mortar in 3D embossing folder. So I've already embossed that piece, and just a tip if you're not used to using embossing folders, when you run it through, decide if it's directional, decide which way you want your bricks to show. So I want my bricks to be that direction. If I'd put the cardstock in the other way around, my bricks would be going up and down. The other thing too, if you want it to be perfectly lined up, there's a line right there so you can line it up on there. Sometimes it's difficult to see it that way, so simply flip it over and line it up against the line so you can get things perfectly straight. So that printed line is there for you to line things up. When you do emboss, you need to put it through the embossing folder with the folded side first and never roll it back through, because if you do it with any of the open sides in first, it can actually offset your folder and damage it. So it always goes in folded side first and you never bring it back out. It just goes all the way through. So that's a tip on there. And so I've got my brick wall basically already embossed for the background. The other thing that I've pre-cut to make it easy on you was with early espresso, I used the die that cuts out the outline image of the sunflower. So I did that. Now, you may have already figured out what I did here. There's the outline there on that flower, and this is the inside part. When I was playing around with these dies, I thought, oh, what a waste with all that inside, and put it on here, and I was going to do some sort of flower, and then I thought, hey, it looked like a lion. So that's where I got that idea. Now, we'll start with doing the lion, and I'll show you some tips and tricks to doing that easily. So once you have it cut out, don't peel it off straight away. What you want it to do is you want it to go onto a piece of paper so you can glue it. Now, that's what I forgot. I just grab myself a scrap piece of paper. Sorry about that. So any scrap piece of paper, and you want it to go over to stay in one piece. Now, mine's sticking to my plate because my plate's very old and scratched up. But if your plate is not scratched up, you just want it to try to get it to come out in one piece. And most of it came out. Okay, so most of it did come out in one piece, not all of it, but that's okay. You just pop those pieces back in because we're going to glue them to get it to go into place. And if some of them aren't in place straight away, that's okay. You can glue them later. So I'm just going to pop a couple of these back where they belong and show you the trick for gluing it. Okay, so I'll just give you a close-up. I've got it turned upside down and all the little pieces are back in place. So now this takes a little time. You need to glue each little piece, not the outline part. You just want the little pieces that would normally pop out and you'd throw away. So you need to put a little bit of glue on each piece. You don't have to cover it completely because we will be embossing this later on as well, so it will stick in place. So I'm just going to show you how I do the gluing, and then I will pause it and show you the end result. So just don't worry if the pieces fall out because we will put them in place later. So a bit of glue right where the pieces are. These are falling out nicely because I actually put it through the folder twice. Ran it through twice. Okay, so I'm just putting glue on just those pieces that I want to glue down. Now I will pause and get to the end and show you the end result. Okay, so I've got little dots of glue on all those little pieces there. Don't move it around, just leave it as is. Don't worry if some of them have moved out of place. And then you need to put your backing piece over the whole thing. So the tip here is there's a couple curved areas on the sunflower, so look for those curved areas and try to line them up. And I think that's them there. So just pop it straight over the parts that you've glued and give it a press down. And then when you flip it over, most of them will have stuck where they're meant to be stuck. And if you've got a few that didn't make it into the right spot, you can just glue them down afterwards. Pop them back into place. So let me just pop that there. And again, as I said, you don't need a lot of glue on them because we will be embossing this piece, and that will help to press them into place. That stuck onto something on the background there. So don't worry about the little dots in the middle or even the center. I'm going to try to change this one up. You could put that down to have his nose, but I'm thinking I'm going to try something different. So there, everything's basically just the center bits, parts that you would normally throw away, have been glued down. And as long as you didn't put glue in the other areas, you should now be able to pull up the outline. As you pull it up, you might want to just press the different pieces down to keep them down in place. So hopefully you can see how I'm pulling this up. And you just want to have just enough glue on there just to hold them in place. But because if you go overboard with the glue, you might get the outline on there, and you want to have the outline to be used for your next card. And that one, I think I might have got glue in the wrong place. Okay, you can use something like your pick-a tool to push every piece down as you pull them up, if you don't have nails like me. So this is my lucky week where my nails are nice and long. Next week they'll probably all break. So I'm just using my fingernail to press them into place. Okay, now a couple of them missed, so you can just pop them back where they need to go. Doesn't have to be perfect. That's what handcrafts are. They're handmade, so they're not expected to be perfect. So originally when I did this, I think I glued every single one separately and popped it down all separately, which took much longer. So just pop that last little one down. So if any of them have gotten loose or out of place, just pop them down again. Like this one here, probably needs a tiny bit of glue on there. I'll try to put a tiny bit. Just spread a little bit down there. And put that back in place. Now, you might be thinking, well, why didn't I just use the adhesive sheets? The trouble with doing this technique in the adhesive sheet is the adhesive sheet would be on the whole thing, so trying to peel off the adhesive sheet on each separate one wouldn't work very well. So you're left with that nice piece there. If you want, you can poke out all the little dots there, or you can leave them in. And then there's the lion's face. So decide which way up you want the lion's face, and then you can draw the face in. What I did on my original card here is I used that as the nose, but I think this time around I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to put a lion's face on there. And I'm not very good at drawing, so I might pencil it in first to decide how I want it to go. And you also kind of need to decide which way up. I kind of like the ruffles down at the bottom. But you definitely want to draw the face first before you put it through the embossing folder. So let me design a face and I'll be back. Okay, so I've kind of roughly designed a lion's face. I hope it looks like a lion's face. And so draw it in with the black pen, or if you have the early Espresso pen, this is their Stampin' Right markers. So I'm just going to draw this eyes in. Should probably do the centers in black. And I'm not sure. I'm not a very good artist, so I'm not sure how I should color these in. But my children are better artists than me, and they'd probably be able to tell me how to make it look like he's looking a certain way and stuff. So this time around, I thought I would draw a face instead of just using the big nose, and then trying to make sort of a big lion nose. I don't know what lion noses look like. So it's just your imagination when you draw your lion. Color him in. But keep in mind, do this before you emboss it. And then I'm just going to give him some big fluffy cheeks. And then I don't know. I did this at a class recently, and some of them put fangs, so those are just kind of whisker bits. Okay, so there's my silly looking lion. Friendly lion. And once you have your lion's face drawn, then you emboss it with the subtle embossing folder. So if you have a look at that, it gives it a bit of texture. So I'll do that in a minute. So that's the face. I need to emboss that. The other thing is for this card, your background, again, because you're not going to see it, I cut out of the center. But in this case, I'm going to cut the center of the flower out. And that way I save on cardstock, because that will be the center of this flower here. And I also want to cut a little bit of a flourish to go in there. When you're doing something like this out of the center of a layer that you're going to use, keep in mind, don't get it too close to the edge. So if I had it right up to that edge, it would cut out and you would see that cut out. So put it more in the center and make sure whatever you're cutting out is plenty of room. And I always just set the top layer on just to check that that's going to cut it where I want it to be. So I'm going to go cut that out and I will be right back. Okay, so I've cut those two pieces out there. And that saves me on cardstock, so I didn't have to cut another really big piece just for the center of the flower. So these parts here you're not going to be seeing. So I'll set that aside. I can actually glue that one down. So I'm going to stick this onto there at the moment. And I'll just use some tear and tape to do it nice and quick. Because it's an uneven surface, I like to use the tear and tape because it gives it a nice flat, firm piece to hold on to. And I do all my edges. And with the tabs there. Tabs so I can line it up nicely onto the pink. So pop this over onto your background and then peel the tabs off once you're satisfied that it's centered. Now, one thing I forgot to mention when I was cutting that out is you should actually stamp it first. So I've gone ahead and I've used my stamp apparatus, stamped on that, and then cut it out, because with this one, that one's solid, but this one I thought I'm going to change it up, and it gives a bit of a depth to it. So I've stamped my Magenta Madness cardstock with Magenta Madness. Okay, so that's that background done. And I've also gone and embossed with the subtle embossing folder the lion's face. So you can see it gives it a bit of texture. When you're embossing, keep in mind that the embossing folder is directional. So it's got lines going this way on the embossing folder. It's hard to see because it is subtle. But see, there's some lines on there. So depending on how you want the lines to show up, I did it this direction in the embossing folder. So there's the fold there, and it went through this way. If you do it any other way, you'll just have lines going different ways, but it just gives a bit of texture to the lion's face. So I've got two cards on the go now. Let's finish one of them. So here's the lion. And that's my layers on the top. I need to stamp it first before I put the white on there. And so with this one, I'm going to stamp the stem in the Just Jade. And I'm going to stamp the You Are My Person in the Early Espresso. So I just want to using the head to give me an idea about where I want things to go, I'm going to put my you're my person. I'll do that after, I think. Where's my stem? So the stem. So you want the stem to come up. It can go up farther because it's going to be behind the lion, but you want to have some idea of, oh, you can't see it in the shot. You want to have some idea of where to place it. So put the face kind of where you want it to be and then ink it up. That's just jade. Don't press too hard, but you don't need the whole thing inked up. I always turn it over just to check. That looks quite juicy to me. And then looking at where I want it to go, I just move the face out of the way and just press it down. Okay, so I've now got my stem down there, and the head's going to go up like about there. And now I know where I can put my words. So the early espresso is for the words here. You are my person. I always flip it over to check that I've got enough ink on it. And I'm just going to tuck it right in there. There we go. So you are my person. And get the ink out of the way. So we'll put the background on here. And I'm just going to decorate the inside quickly with that little extra strip. But I want to decide, do I want it to have the pretty colors on the background this time? Or do I want it to be with a lot of yellow? I'm kind of liking the yellow. I think I like the yellow there, so I think I'll put that down with the yellow. So I will go with the yellow for the inside as well. And the inside of the card, I put the best moments in my life happen with you. So I will stamp that first. That's from the Daisy Lane set as well. In the early espresso. I will get that stamped. Always stamp before you stick down in case there's an oopsie moment, because there's two sides to every piece of cardstock. So if you don't like the way it comes out, you can flip it over and use the other side. Surprisingly enough, that came out nice. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue onto that little strip and glue it on the bottom of the cardstock before I put it inside. Now I will be putting onto my website. Did I stick that right one? Yep. Okay. I will be putting on my website the sizes for everything that I'm doing here. So you can go and get the sizes, as well as below this blog I will put all the products that I use. Now that's gone over the edges a little bit, which is fine. I will just snip that off. If I find my scissors. Oh, there they are, hiding. So I'm going to snip that off the edge there and off the edge there. It's always best to cut it off afterwards, because when you glue it down sometimes you can't line it up very well. And I'm just going to speed things up a bit. Just put a bit of glue in there. Normally I use tear and tape, but glue makes things quicker. And you could change this card around and do it opening the other way. I just decided to have both cards open top ways. So going to glue the inside bit. So I can glue this down, just the edges, get it to line up in place. And And with these floral designs, it's quite nice because you get a lot of different floral designs in that set, flowers for every season. So you basically get spring, summer, and fall. Sorry about that. An alarm went off, so I need to speed things up a bit. I was saying that you get summer, winter, autumn, and spring, flowers for every season. So some flowers might be in the country you're at, some flowers might be for other countries. So we're going to pop that down there. I smudged it a bit. Must have ink on my fingers. Oh, and I forgot to put the ribbon. Should have put the ribbon on first. But that's okay. I'm going to pop it up with some dimensionals. So give it some depth. And there you go. Just a couple dimensionals just to make the lion's head stand up. And then I just like to put them right about there. This looks good. Now yes, if you wanted the ribbon, you should have, I should put the ribbon on before I put that across. But I'm thinking I might leave that and just put a few cute little gems on it. So we got these little gems here. I'll just add some splash of color with those gems. So these are the in color gems, and I think I will just put a few different colors in there. Let's see if I can get it. These are sticky backed, so I'll just pop and cover up. They're really good for covering up your little mistakes. So I'm just best to bend it to get it off. And pop them just in a few different places. You should always do things in odd numbers, so 3s and 5s and things like that. And maybe a yellow one as well. Alright, so if you do have smudges, you can cover them up. So there we go, that one's done. Slightly different than this. So that was done with the ribbon, and I did a little flower inside. I used pens to color the flower. And this one was done without the ribbon, and I used the extra strip on the inside. So let's finish up this one here. Thanks a bunch. So to finish that, we want to stamp our cardstock. So using the words "thanks a bunch," if you don't have a long enough block, you just do it diagonally on a D block. There we go. Now I've already cut the strip. It's actually just a little leftover piece. To get it to line up properly, the tip for that is cut it to the size, either 1/2 inch, 3/4, or 1 inch. And then choose which end you want. So that's the end I had before. I think I'll change it up and have this end. Slide it through. So as you can see, there's 3 different widths, so it should slide all the way through until it goes to the back. If you're unsure, you can always turn it over and look. So slide it through, keep it within those grooves, and it'll be nice and straight. And you cut it. Now, keep that little cut off piece, because you're going to use that in a minute. I'm doing this with early espresso ink. And you cut it first because then you know how far over to put the words. Now this is just big enough. I've done this before. Hopefully I can do this on camera. Yay! I did. I impressed myself. Now what you can do is you take that little piece that you have left over from the one side, you put it over to the other side, and it's hard to do it when I'm trying to hold it up in the, to get you to have a close-up look. So you put it to the other side to determine where you want it to be cut. So once you have that determined, then you just either draw a line or just use your scissors to snip the edge. So what I'm going to do is lining that up where I want. I've drawn a little line, so I now know if I cut my cardstock at that line, when I put it in the punch, it will punch it out to there. Now it's probably sounding quite complicated, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm cutting where that line is. Don't worry about erasing the line. Snip that line. That's extra piece I don't need. Now when I put it in the punch, again, slide it between the gaps all the way back till it's nice and flat. Punch it. Nope, I didn't go far enough. Yep, there we go. That's far enough. There we go. And now, see, when I punch it, it punched it exactly where I needed it to go. So I didn't cut the ends off. So don't pre-punch it and then stamp it. You want to cut one side, stamp, and then use the piece for the other edge. Now I'm going to do a similar thing with the layer, the early espresso layer. So that's in the middle one. See, that's in the 3/4. Keep it there, slide it all the way back, punch that out. So that's there. Put your layered piece in there where you want it to be. So I want to have about that much of a gap. So using that extra piece, use it to determine how much, kind of hard to see in the line, how much gap you want. When you decide how much gap you want, you just simply cut off the other side. There are templates other demonstrators have made and other videos that explain this as well. So it's quite a good thing, keeping that little extra bit. So I've drawn a line. I'm going to snip where that line is. And now I'll slide it in. Same thing. Make sure it goes all the way to the end. Cut it off. And now hopefully I've got my banner to have there the same amount of gap on either side. Okay, so hopefully you've learned something about using that punch, if anything else from this video. So I'm just going to quickly put some glue there and pop it on. Nice thing with the glue is you can wiggle it into place. So I'm wiggling it into place. Okay, I've got that piece there, that piece there. I'm just going to speed this up and just put some glue around there. So it doesn't matter that there's gaps in the center. That won't matter as far as it's sticking down because you won't see that part anyway. So make sure we got the card opening the right direction. Yep. Always do that. I've had a lot of people, and I think I've only done it once, but I've had people in my classes get so carried away with making what they're making, they forget to actually check. Now the inside here, I just added the little elements to the inside. So that piece there isn't going to be stamped on. If it was going to be stamped on, I'd stamp it first, but since it's not, I'm just going to glue the cardstock down. You don't need a lot of glue, or you could use the tape. When I do tape, I used to only do one side, you know, one on each side, but then it seemed to open at the end. So those extra pieces I cut, I've got a green one here, and then I also need my leaves. So having a old cutting plate like that, it makes the middle part stick. So a leaf, my 3 leaves there. There we go. And my other part. So these just a little bit of glue on to the fatter areas. You don't have to worry about getting glue on the skinny bits. So just a bit of glue on. Oh, if it comes out. Just a bit of glue on the fat parts of the die cut, because once those are glued down, the skinny parts aren't going to move, so you don't have to go overboard. So we'll just pop that like there just to bring a bit of color to the inside of the card. And the same with the green. Just a little bit on the leafy bits. Okay. So not a lot of glue needed. And I'm just going to pop that, just sort of center it through the flowers. So that's inside done. Outside we've already got a brick on there. So for the center, another tip I have for you, which is why I have some scrap paper here. Use a bit of your tear and tape. I've done a video on this, a quick tip video. Put a bit of your tear and tape down and then peel it up. So you got the sticky showing. And from that sticky, see those little dots? So there's some of them I haven't popped out. You could take a tool and pop each one out. You could leave them in if you like. But if you don't want them in there, use your sticky tape and just press down where you got the dots that you want to have come out. And so as you can see, they stick to the sticky. So they stick to the double-sided tape. So it's a quick and easy way to get little bits out of die cuts without having to poke them all out. I know some people love poking them out. And you know, you could use your pick a tool with the brush attachment as well. Some people just leave them in because they think it adds a bit to the card. It adds a bit of texture. But if you're not going to glue behind them, they will eventually fall out. So if you are using a die that it's not going to have glue behind those little bits. So there you go. Oh, one last one. I got some sticky left. There it is. All right, so I got all those little bits out. Quick and easy, stuck to my double-sided tape. Now, for this, I am not going to glue it all down. You could try to line it up perfectly if you want. Find out where the curves are, etc. Somewhere around there. Or you can just leave it sticking out the way it goes. On here, I'm simply going to put the glue around the center part. Not over those holes or anything, just around the center. Because the edges, I don't need them to be glued down, and I don't care how it sits, so I'm just going to randomly just let it pop in the center there. So, a bit different than the card I'd already done because those edges are stuck down. This one, I've got it stuck up. And then if you want, you could actually put that dark center in the middle. If you want to have that dark area. I kind of like the look of the light color in the center. So I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to pop my flower up with some dimensionals. Just closing that ink pad before I do something silly like stick my hand in it. So just a few dimensionals on here. And I might glue a couple of leaves down in the corner because then that, if I put one in the corner, that will give me an idea. Again, you don't have to get all the little bits glued on here. This would be a good one that the adhesive sheets would work for. Just the fat areas of a few bits of the fat areas of the die. The thicker areas, I shouldn't say fat, I guess. Thicker areas. So if I pop this down in the corner there, then that kind of gives me an idea where I should put the other ones. And see, this is much darker color than the Magenta Madness. Berry, I think it was Berry Burst. So I put the ink on it was actually Magenta Madness ink on the Berry Burst, which looks quite nice. So then I'll just pop that guy roughly about, pop them there. stuck to my finger. And the last one. A couple bits of glue. And this one I'll come down slightly more, coming down that way. Okay. If things are sticking to you when you're trying to put them down, you can use a block to push it into place. And pop those dimensionals off. My fingers are all sticky now. And then depending on which way up you want it to go, I think that looks pretty good there. Pop your flower in place. Don't worry, this will not come off because we got the glue in the center. And then a few more dimensionals for my words, and I am done. So, some dimensionals on the banner. I cut my dimensionals in half to get best use out of them sometimes. So if I have a banner like that, I'll cut it in half and put it at an angle. And then I get my dimensionals last much longer. And there we go. That one with the thanks a bunch. So when you put your flower on, just keep in mind you have words going at the bottom. If you decide you want your words to go somewhere else, like at the top, then just keep that in mind as you do your card. So there you go. Thanks a bunch with a bit of decoration on the inside. And then this one is done with the bright magenta madness. And then we've got the lion card, You're My Person, without the ribbon, and the DSP. And then the other lion with a different face. So he's got the big nose. The reason I didn't use this is I was actually thinking I might pop that in the center there. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll use the Daisy Lane, the Celebrate Sunflowers, and the lovely You stamp sets. If you enjoyed that, please give me a thumbs up. And you can subscribe for other videos. I'll be doing more videos from the holiday catalog in the near future. I have a lot of tip videos and quick tips and did you know videos. I will also be doing a blog about this with the measurements and all the products I used. So have a look at papercraftaddiction.blogspot.co.nz, and you can go to my website at michellekritchley.stampinup.net if you want to purchase anything or contact me. If you have a demonstrator, please contact them if you want to buy anything. If you live in New Zealand and don't already have a demonstrator, feel free to contact me. I'd love to help you. And if you live in my area, I'm in Tuakau and want to come to classes, my events calendar is on my website, and I'd love for you to come and see me in person, and I'll show you how to make these cards. Have a good day. Bye-bye.